WandaVision has ended just this weekend. It was a Marvel limited series on Disney Plus. 9 episodes, single season, no plans for next ones. It completely dominated the streaming market in the US, and I was also one of the people watching it on a weekly basis to my great enjoyment. Now, a couple words as to why this show is so important in the grander scheme of things. After all, Marvel has already made multiple TV shows over the years. ABC had Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Agent Carter. On Hulu, there were Runaways, Cloak and Dagger, and also Hellstrom. And finally, Netflix had Daredevil, Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, Iron Fist, Defenders, and The Punisher. So, what's the big deal suddenly with the new show? Well, back in the days, Marvel Studios, the one responsible for movies, and Marvel Television were two separate entities run by two different teams who didn't particularly like cooperating. As such, the shows would sometimes reference the movies, but the movies would never reference the shows, and as such, the shows were never really required viewing for fans of the universe and often felt a little bit on the side, like orphaned, unwanted children. However, 2 years ago, the two parts of Marvel finally merged into one under Marvel Studios and producer Kevin Feige. All of the ongoing shows, or the ones in between seasons, were cancelled, but instead we were promised a bunch of new ones on Disney Plus with a completely new approach. They would now be fully integrated with the movies, continue the storylines from them, and also the other way around. Some of the movies would now start referencing the shows. They would contain the same characters and actors, and crucially have movie-level production value. To give you an idea, WandaVision reportedly had $25 million budget per episode, making it the most expensive TV show in history. So there were solid reasons to be excited about it, and now that it's ended, I think it's a good moment to try and look back and evaluate the results, which I will now attempt to do. The completely spoiler-free version is that it's a must-watch for fans of the universe, but I'd even recommend it to other people as well, as long as they just do a quick homework on the two central characters to understand who they are. Because I think even if you don't enjoy the traditional superhero blockbusters, you may like this thing, as it's completely different and something new and fresh. Okay, to give you a bit more information, I will still try to avoid massive spoilers, but there will be some basic info given, so be wary. The story opens with 3 episodes of an in-universe sitcom called WandaVision, each episode inspired by a different decade in sitcom history. They all center around Wanda Maximoff and Vision living together in the suburbs. What is going on, you may ask? Why are they suddenly in a sitcom? Why is Vision even alive? Why are the decades changing? When is this taking place? Is it real or is it just weird fantasy? Or maybe it has to do with Wanda's reality-altering magic powers. The answers to all these questions and more will be provided in time, as very soon, somewhere around the 3rd episode, cracks begin to appear in what would initially seem as the perfect idyllic life for this superhero couple. And to help solve this mystery, several characters from previous movies return to investigate. Jimmy Woo, the FBI agent from Ant-Man and the Wasp, Darcy Lewis, the snarky astrophysicist from the Thor movies, and most importantly, Monica Rambeau, the little girl from Captain Marvel, now all grown up, and part of SWORD, a new organization created to deal with sentient weapons and superhero threats. May sound weird and messy and all over the place, but let me promise you, it all makes sense as the information is gradually revealed, and it really is best to go in without reading any particular spoilers whatsoever. But if you're interested in what specifically made me appreciate the show, here we go. First of all, the two central performances, they are fantastic. These are characters which in the movies were always secondary at best, and now they have proper time to develop themselves, to shine, and the opportunity to show their range as actors. Elizabeth Olsen goes through a range of different moods and emotions as Wanda, and she's able to seamlessly emulate the different styles of all the sitcoms from past decades. It's incredible how easily she slips into those templates, and yet is able to still go back to the actual real-life Wanda that's still somewhere underneath the facade. There's a brilliant scene in episode 5, I think, where, without spoiling too much, she goes out to confront some people, and it's the first time we see her true self in a long while, and it was mesmerizing because suddenly she's no longer charming and cute and funny. Suddenly she's menacing and scary. Paul Bettany as Vision also has a lot of fun with the role. He's able to show much more range than usual as the robotic Vision, and I really love the comedic side of him, especially with the Magician's Show episode, which I think is the second one. And again, underneath the sitcom facade, there is the real Vision, who still has a lot of gravitas and does drop these pearls of wisdom occasionally. There were several scenes in the show where I was thoroughly impressed with how great he was, particularly with um, acting just with his voice, its tone and cadence. I think he's incredible when it comes to that aspect. All of the side characters are great as well. It was really cool to see Jimmy Woo and Darcy again, and they have a great dynamic together. Teyona Paris is very charismatic as Monica, and I enjoyed her quite a lot. The standout, though, is Catherine Hahn, who plays the nosy neighbor and Wanda's friend Agnes. I won't say where the show goes with this character, but she does become quite important, and Hahn's performance is a key factor in why it works so well. Then, apart from the performances, there's the attention to detail, the way in which things like the aspect ratio that changes depending on which decade of the sitcoms we're in, the camera and lighting setups, the sets and special effects, the costumes, all of that is on point, and I really have nothing bad to say about it. And also, when speaking about special effects, when we're still in the sitcom mode, they're made to look crappy as special effects would in each specific decade. But then when we're in the real world, the special effects suddenly look just like in the movies, just top-notch quality. So there's really nothing to complain about here. You can see where the money went. You can see that the budget was really used well. The writing is generally great. I liked how the story slowly reveals its true nature while sticking to playing homage to the classic sitcoms. I like the aspect of Darcy, Jimmy, and Monica theorizing what's going on just as much as me, my friends, and people on the internet were doing between episodes. And I like the conclusion of the story, especially with the two final confrontations, one for Wanda and one for Vision. They both deal with them in very specific ways, which fit the characters extremely well, and they're a nice departure from the traditional fist fight between a hero and a similarly looking villain. And the emotional impact of the ending that follows is quite strong. I really, really loved the last conversation between Wanda and Vision before the show ends. The one issue I have with the writing is that in the final episode, it seems that the writers suddenly didn't have a good idea what to do with all these side characters. Darcy, Jimmy, Monica, and also Hayward, the director of S.W.O.R.D. Up until then, they're all pretty great in their own right and placed on interesting trajectories in terms of their character arcs. But then in the last episode, it just seems like there was no good way to put them in there, and it feels both kind of forced and kind of useless. They were not required to even be there at the climax. But other than that, I really have no complaints. Also, one point that I want to make about the release model, week by week instead of a whole season at once, and the resulting weekly discussions about fan theories and so on. I love this model. I think it already worked quite amazingly well for The Mandalorian, also on Disney Plus, and it makes me go back in my mind to the days of Lost, when we would try to come up with theories and explanations with other friends that I watched it with week by week. It definitely makes the show feel like it lasts longer. Otherwise, I bet people would just binge it over the weekend and then forget all about it during the week. And as such, we have time to analyze the specific episodes, to come up with theories, to create memes as well. And I really like that added aspect of maintained relevance of the show. So that's great. But in the case of WandaVision, it did lead to some disappointment on the internet among folks who had crazy theories about characters that would show up, who the real villain is, and so on. And a lot of those theories came to be untrue, most of them, to be honest. And I saw folks being disappointed with the season finale. But I do think it's slightly unfair because, yeah, it would have been fun to see some of the crazy stuff come to fruition, but the show had no obligation to do any of that. It didn't really promise to be so extensive. It was centered on the story of Wanda and Vision, and it managed to execute that pretty much flawlessly. And I think a lot of the people are upset because of their overblown expectations in terms of the Marvel universe or even multiverse as a whole. They were expecting, people are expecting every single property nowadays to wow them, not with the actual current storytelling, but with teasing the future. So people are more concerned with with a small teaser for the next one instead of just focusing on what's going on right now, which honestly does tend to get a little bit ridiculous. With that out of the way, let me say one more time that WandaVision is terrific as a show and as a part of the MCU as well. Uh, if it's any indication of the quality of the other upcoming shows to come, then we're in for a treat with the amount of incoming content, as well as the ability of Marvel to go experimental, to try out things they haven't done before and go crazy with the format in which they tell their stories, because that aspect they nailed extremely well.